Good morning. Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our speakers today are three students from Ukraine. Snizhana Dobromylska, who was born and lives in Lviv and studies at the Faculty of Journalism at the Lviv National University and writes about the horrors of the war in the media. In addition, she is actively engaged in social activities. In particular, she is a member of the student self-government and scout organization Plast. Davyd Potapchyk, who is born in the Donetsk region, lives and studies in Kremenchuk after moving there during the 2014 war. Currently, he's on his third year pursuing a degree in Germanic languages and translation at the Kremenchuk Mykhailo Ostrohradskyi National University. And finally, Anna Zadorozhna, who was born and lives in Lviv. She studies journalism at Lviv National University and writes articles about sports, outstanding athletes, and sports during the war. She makes comments about Ukrainian and world football in the social media. Over to you, Snizhana.
My topic is Russian war against Ukraine for centuries, struggle of young for victory. My name is Snizhana. I am 20 years old. I study journalism at Faculty of Lviv National University. Firstly, I want to say that tonight the enemy struck with drones in the Kyiv region. Zaporizhzhia was shelled during the day on several residential buildings, which a cruel manifestation of terrorism. I was born in Lviv region, and now I found it. Fortunately, my city is not subject to daily rocket and artillery fire. However, Swatovo, Kakhovka, and Kharkiv are destroyed every day at the hands of Russian occupiers. They are hometowns of my best friends, where they or their family are now. I think it's extremely terrible that my close people, who are constantly under fire, are used to this. They calmly report how many shells landed on nearby street. I think it's extremely terrible that my close people who are constantly under fire and used to this. They calmly report how many shells landed on a nearby street. However, in our daily correspondence, we had to discuss work, studies, or where we go on vacation this summer. However, as a result of the aggression of Russian cities, we have to discuss shelling and send photos of the horrors inflicted by the aggressor country. I want to note that Russia did not attack Ukraine on February 2022. Formally, this happened in 2013 years. When Russia began to intrude in its troops into the territory of the Ukrainian primarily of Crimea and the Lugansk and Donetsk region. However, before that, the aggressor tried to destroy the Ukrainian people. For many centuries, Russia organized repression and holodomors against Ukraine. Russia banned the language, stole Ukraine history and culture. Russia killed Ukrainian artists, writers, and politicians. The aggression of the Russian Empire affects almost every Ukrainian family, in particular my family. On 1949 years, when my grandfather 20 years, along with his mother and father, we were taken to Siberia. Because my grandfather supposedly has a lot of land and cattle. My family spent 11 years in a cold taiga. Fortunately, they were able to return to the homeland. However, not all were able to return or survive after exile. Today, Russia continues to use the same method of struggling against Ukrainian people. In March of this year, Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said that Russia has taken at the least 40,000 Ukrainian children for the occupied territories. She said of the children are resettled in other regions Russia, including Siberia. Of course, the Ukrainian government is actively working to return from Russia children and people who were illegally taken to enemy territory. Yesterday, Ukrainian children were returned to Ukraine together with their mother and legal responsibility. According to the National Information Bureau, a total of 300 children returned to the territory of Ukraine. Despite the pain of war, the news of the children return makes us happy. In my opinion, it's young who do a lot of victory of Ukraine. After all this in the most activity part of society, in particular students who are ready to give all their search to achieve the goal. From first day of the full-scale war, I and all my friends began activity volunteering. We wove camouflage nets for the military. We made trench candles so that the soldier could have light and warmth. Young people become manager of the large volunteer hub. We delivering food and animation from abroad. I want to tell you that Ukrainian students do not only volunteer to win. They also go to the front to the different Ukrainian from Russia. Many of first friends are exciting define their national land. Recently, my team of students self-governed of the Faculty of Journalism, together with teachers, called funds for a terminal imaging for our students. That's all. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Snizhana. We will now move to Davyd Potapchyk.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to mention that is a great honor to be present on this lecture. My topic is for today is how pro-Russian bloggers and media assist the Russian state media in forming narratives and just affect the public in general. 1 second, if you would allow me to pull up the video. Can you see it?
Welcome back.
Can you hear it or see it?
Yes.
All right.
We can see it and we can hear it. Thank you, David.
Right. Thank you. This particular video is, I found it whilst looking up the attack that happened on 27th of June on the Kremenchuk Mall, the city that I live in. I was interested in how Russians attempted to deny their fault in this actually catastrophe. And this is one of the sources that they have referred to. So, all right, let's show. I've blurred the video, the face of the person. That's a loose term in this case, to avoid copyright strikes and such. And I've added some text to highlight moments that deserve particular attention.
Like fellow Inquisitors, we're back at the desk, and boy, do we have a story in my morning video. Do you guys?
All right. First of all,
I expressed.
It is important to observe how does this person addresses the viewer. It is already, the viewer is already given some degree of respect as by being called a truth seeker, an inquisitor, a detective of sorts. This is used to establish trust and to further the narrative. Also, an important thing to note is how most of these types of bloggers latch on to dissident movements, with dissident narratives, not depending on the side of the political conflict, I should say. They also use it to establish trust. Right, let's pause.
Some doubts, let's say, about a story that was being reported. I was going to say developing, but
I sped up the
it seems to
video.
have developed. Let's just take a quick look. Gosh, look at this. Already in print in the UK. Tuesday, 28th of June. Murder at the shops. At least 13 dead as Russia bombs crowded shopping centre in Ukraine. Doesn't... Yeah, never mind. Global...
Right. What's important to observe here? This is not the only video on this channel that depicts Russia as a good side in this conflict. There are approximately hundreds of them, and this particular, let's say, this particular insect is has been shown on Russian state media as a hero or a martyr, and there is an already aura of acceptance towards whatever he says, and he uses this aura to depict Russians as the good doers that are simply incapable of committing atrocities intentionally.
Doesn't... Yeah, never mind. Global outcry. More than 1,000 people inside scrambled for safety. G7 says the attack was deliberate provocation.
You are unable to see it, but he frowns at the moment when he says about G7. It's obviously because his goal is to depict G7 as a source of misinformation and the enemy of everything that is decent, and then, by extension, the NATO and the collective West.
NATO rapid reaction troops grow from 40,000 to 300,000 in response to Putin. Okay, that's one British headline. What does Metro have to say? Metro is always quite entertaining. Missile strike at mall, shoppers murdered by Russia. Death toll unimaginable.
This, like it is said in the video, this particular video was released on one day after the attack, and civilian casualties were still being counted, and because he is not prepared to address this topic head on, he launches onto every single possibility to attack the narrative presented by the news generators like Metro and such. He jumps at every single chance. For example, a discrepancy and difference in number of deaths reported. Apologies.
Just said 13. Now, my imagination isn't as strong as it once was, perhaps when I was 5 years old, but I can imagine 13 people perishing in such a blaze. But okay, Zelensky, okie dokie. Videos taken moments later recorded victims screaming, trying to flee the blazing smoke-filled building. Okay, I haven't seen that video, but maybe there is one. 11.
Yeah, it's also, I wanted to point out how every single viewpoint that contradicts his, let me rephrase that 1 second. If you can notice, if you refute the point in the same way, if you were to refute this particular point about thousands or hundreds of people running away from the mall as being said by, for example, a source from G7, it would form a pattern, a noticeable one that would spread out that this guy just hates everything Western, and he dismisses as a lie. So for the sake of believability, he just conveniently forgets about anything contradictory to his point of view.
People. So presumably this was reported even earlier than the previous article. So it's when 11.
Also another cut.
Okay, yeah, and then we have a repeat. The UN condemned the attack on the shopping centre as deplorable. whatever investigation that took place that concluded that this was all, a Russian act was very quick.
Just as the note says, I just wanted to be able to give you the time to read it in case it is too fast.
We have to agree there. The Mirror, Daily Mirror, the heart of Britain, in fact.
He goes over multiple sources.
It says more than 1,000 people were inside when two missiles slammed into the mall at Kremenchuk.
Same type of deal as with the casualty numbers. He also latches out on the little details whilst ignoring the big ones, like the weaponry being undeniably Russian, for example.
Right, so it's not just one, it's now two. The death toll has gone up to 18, 25 hospitalized, 36 missing. Reuters, a missile had also struck a nearby factory, but it was closed and not a military target.
It, in fact, wasn't a military target. Thankfully, to refute that, the personnel in the factory and its owners, as far as I can recall, allowed observers from Human Rights Watch to enter the factory and inspect it for any traces of military infrastructure being present. And very inconveniently for Russians, there wasn't any.
Okay, we'll believe you. So it's a question about crimes against humanity, she said. It sounds like it was targeting a nearby factory. Shelling civilian infrastructure. You mean like Odessa? Why was the Western media so quiet about Odessa? Because I reported on this.
Well, this is the rhetorical tactic, as I would recall it. It's called whataboutism. For example, it is used to nullify the, the quantifiable evil that an act has. For example, Russians justify their invasion of Ukraine by bringing up biolabs. And if you address that there is no military biolabs in Ukraine, they will go for the most nonsensical route possible. They will say, George Bush also said there were no biolabs in Iraq and such. Let's go on.
Pretty soon after. Let's.
Also, an important note, observe the change in the tone. He presents very few Russian news sources compared to Western ones. He wants to create an atmosphere, for example, an aura of sorts of credibility that is supposed to surround Russian sources. Funnily enough, Russian sources will actually use his video to back up their own claims.
Then see, the Kremlin answered the question about the strike in Kremenchuk. Peskov said that the Ministry of Defense gave comprehensive information on the strike.
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower the pitch on this one.
Before we take a look at that, let's actually have a look at the video. So this presumably is shortly after. And 1,000 people are supposed to be inside.
The people were evacuated, and this video was filmed approximately half an hour after the missiles hit.
A bustling shopping centre, the British media stated. So where are all the cars? I see one blue.
The parking lot was cleared, and the people mostly by National Guard servicemen and civilians that volunteered to assist. Let's go on. I'm floundering. Apologies.
Maybe it's got a lot of car parking and this is just an emergency bit. A lot of men, middle-aged, military-aged men.
Most of these men are, in fact, assisting with the rescues by clearing off the rubble and helping people get out of the ruins. Or keeping the passerbys away.
Where are the women? Where are the children? I thought this was an attack on a busy...
He once again returns to Russian point of view.
Question is this question. So the site in question is this place, Amstor.
This particular moment is the only evidence that, in fact, supposed to contradict the narrative presented by the media, Western media, that was covering the events.
Okay, if you go to reviews, sort them by newest, 4 months ago. How bad can it be in your hometown? Good mega market, 4 months ago. 4 months ago. 4 months ago. 4 months, 4 months. So there were lots of reviews, quite regular reviews, up until 4 months ago.
If I recall correctly, the reviews were automatically removed, or maybe it is an accident, because even if it were true and if it actually served as a proof against Russian malice in this case, there is plenty of anecdotal evidence present to support pro-Ukrainian narrative about this strike being conducted intentionally. For example, there is a guy that lives 7 stories above me right now. He was inside the building. The only reason he survived is because one of the shelves fell on him and he made off with light bruises. There's hundreds probably of passerbys and shoppers that were present in the mall that can confirm that this mall was nothing but a civilian target, and that there were no ammo dumps, no vehicle repair centers, whatever, or anything. He shows a more colored version of the map. The white roof on the bottom of his screen is the Amstor mall that was bombed, and the factory that is north of it, according to the map, is the Dormash factory that was halted. That was halted during at the moment. Supposedly, it was treated as, or the attack was justified as the attack on the said factory, whilst claiming that it contains military vehicle repair centers and ammunition storage. But as I said before, there were Human Rights Watch observers that confirmed that there were no military infrastructure at all. This is the website of the plant. He once again comes back to the same article he showed, or not the same article, to an article but the same source that he brought up, in order to nail his own narrative down.
However, it's
rather a vile moment, if I recall the time code correctly.
Zelensky's response that really caught me here. Earlier, Zelensky, during a speech to the representatives of the G7 countries, where Boris Trudeau and Ursula von der Leyen again, it's too early to apply to the situation. It doesn't look good, Zelensky. Once again, here we have it. Ukraine doesn't want to negotiate. Peskov there, reminding them it could all end today if you just...
This is a very tricky topic to address, because if we were to believe the words of Russian, by the way, this article is also fake, I checked, of Russian oligarchs that rule the Russian Federation, that it would instantly, we would be proven wrong instantly. Russia would move on with its invasions of Georgia and Kazakhstan, and probably it would later on start showing aggression towards either NATO members or countries of Middle East.
Well, Russia continues on with it.
Another skip.
immediacy with which
this is the part where the conclusion is summed up. It's more.
Certainly the British media, as we've seen, have gone to print so fast with this story again, and very much a sort of identical story. Some little mismatches of the casualty figures, but that's to be expected as information develops.
Yeah, he now presents to criticize himself in a very minor manner in order to further establish more trust from the viewer, establish more of the viewer's trust towards him, because he will, let's say, there is a, right, let's just show it. I'm floundering, I apologize.
And the story continues. But still, what do you think? Is it really everything that the media, British media in particular, says? Or what about the Russians? Do you think they're just all full of rubbish there? Complete nonsense to justify attacking another shopping centre? A shopping centre that hasn't had any reviews or seemingly had any activity in at least 4 months. But Zelensky claims we've got 1,000, at least 1,000 civilians there. I'll let you make up your own mind. I'm not going to say either way, but I think you can tell which way I'm leaning.
This is a very elaborate tactic to force a viewer to come to the conclusion. He questions the viewer's intelligence and uses the trust that he is supposed to have developed with him to push his narrative, to push his narrative like in a final move.
Anyway, that's all I've got to say on this particular.
This is the end of the video. I must bring up another thing as well. There is a tactic in propaganda and psychological warfare called the big lie. It is the lie that is described as so outrageous, people simply cannot misinterpret it as a lie. People consider it truth simply because how outrageous it would be if it actually was recognized as a lie. The important thing about this tactic is that the big lie has to be repeated consistently. Like in this instance, this particular video is but one of 1,000 videos that depict Russian Federation in such positive manner and us as such war criminals. And to go on further, Russian state media uses this video to affect its internal audience, to solidify their viewpoint further. I guess that would be it. I'm sorry if I made a mistake somewhere.
David, actually your presentation was excellent. So what you're pointing out is that this person, whoever he is, puts a lot of distortion in order to confuse the audience of what actually is happening in reality.
Yes.
And you have no idea who this person is?
I have an idea who this person is. Like I said before, I blurred out his face in order to avoid the copyright infringement. For example, if the recording of this video is uploaded on YouTube, he can strike it. But if I add sufficient amount of editing, it will be considered transformative use and it will not be eligible for the strike. So there's that.
I see. But you do know the name of this individual?
I know his pseudonym.
What is his pseudonym?
Earl Grey.
Okay, well, it was very, very informative, and I do hope that a lot of people will think carefully about how they are evaluating his presentation and the distortion involved. So thank you, and we will now move to Anna Zadorozhna. Anna, over to you.
Thank you so much. Now I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Before starting my report, I want to note that today Russia shelled Zaporizhia. Rockets hit a residential building. Because of this, a fire broke out and the floors collapsed. As a result of the attack by the Russians, there are more than 20 victims, including 3 children. 1 person died. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, said, "The terrorist state seeks to destroy our cities, our state, our people. This must not become just another day in Ukraine or anywhere else in Europe or the world. The world needs greater unity and determination to defeat Russian terror faster and protect lives." War is extremely stressful experience for our bodies. The psychological and physical person health suffers, which of course cause negative consequences. Moreover, these two concepts are interconnected, like the famous philosopher Socrates said, "The body does not get sick separately from the soul." Being psychologically healthy means feel contented, cheerful, motivated to work, communicate with family and friends, beside that being self-confident, calm and responsible. All these factors help you adapt to the environment. However, you should admit the fact that it is a real challenge for each Ukrainian to learn how to live and enjoy a life when the war is on the outside. In addition to psychological health is deteriorating as well as physical. So physical health is characterized by good nutrition, an active lifestyle, good habits, sport, and a healthy appearance, skin, face, hair, etc. To be physically healthy also means to have a high maintenance to support internal stability. Before I start talking about the life of Ukrainians during the war and sports, I would like to remind you that Russia's war against Ukraine has been lasted since 2014. The terrorist country constantly falsely claims that they want peace. But if we go deeper, we will find out that Russia's always been invading throughout the centuries first. For example, in 1992-93, Russia occupied Transnistria. After the war had started, Transnistria turned into a grain zone, unrecognized by anyone, with a ruined economy and international isolation. Later, at the same time, Russia provoked the Abkhazian War. Russian planes bombed civilian targets on Georgian-controlled territory, and Russian warships were deployed to bombard Sukhumi. The war ended with Abkhazian separation from Georgia, which was exactly what Russia wanted. There were 2 Chechen wars between 1994 and 2009. In 2008, under the pretext of protecting the population, Russian troops began an invasion of Georgia from the territories of the breakaway republics of North Ossetia and Abkhazia. The Russian-Ukrainian war has been ongoing since 2014. The full-scale invasion is an event that has shaken the lives of all Ukrainians. The war has caused pain and damage, both psychological and physical. Sport in Ukraine, which is directly related to physical health, has also experienced many problems. The Russians massively destroyed sports infrastructure because they thought it would help destroy sport. But we are Ukrainians, we are an unbreakable nation. Our enemies will not break us and our sport. In 2021 was built 50-meter swimming pool Neptune in Mariupol. That could be a great place for training our national team, but instead of sounds of water and joy, there's only rubble left. Altair is the largest hockey and figure skating school in Ukraine, in Donetsk Oblast, was hit by enemy missile, which also set a fire. Not only was it a place of sports, but also a place where humanitarian aid was stored. The building of the Unifact Sports and Fencing Complex in Kharkiv was hit by a shell. The Lokomotiv Sports Palace in Kharkiv was also destroyed. This was the largest sports facility in Kharkiv. A ski base in Chernihiv region was wiped out. Just a year ago, there was held competitions and trainings of Ukrainian national team. Now, despite the extensive damage, the children continue to train against the backdrop of the destroyed base, which the Biathlon Federation of Ukraine is planning to rebuild it. At the Gagarin Football Stadium in Chernihiv, Ukrainian Yas once again proved that no wreckage can break our strong Ukrainian spirit. The club Desna used to play here, and in April, the children, together with the stadium director, organized a match. Despite all this, our athletes keep training. We will continue to participate in competitions and win. For example, at a tournament in Latvia, Ukraine won the medal standings of the European Throwing Cup with a national record. Also, Ukrainian Paralympians took second place in the overall standings of the Winter Paralympics in Beijing. They won 29 medals. This is our country's best ever result. We are aware that the war has caused both physical and psychological damage, but we must remain strong and unconquered. We must be grateful to our armies. Thanks to them, we can live. We must remember that victory is ours and it is going to be reached. Thank you for your attention.
Anna, thank you very, very much for a wonderful presentation. And now we will turn over to our moderator, Susie Halleck. Susie, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Durbach, and thank you all for the great presentations. We have some questions from our audience. The first few will be for all of you, and then I'll have specific questions for each speaker. So for all, we can go in order as you presented. Everyone experiences war in their own way. How does it affect the psychological health of Ukrainians, including you personally? So we can start with Snizhana, please.
Sorry, can you repeat the question because I have bad internet?
Everyone experiences war in their own way. So how does it affect the psychological health of Ukrainians, including you personally? Great. David, would you like to respond?
I would. I think it desensitizes. I think most of the citizens that I interacted with have become desensitized towards the thought of actually being targeted by military and the thought of risking your life every second. That would be it.
Thank you. Anna, do you have anything to add about the psychological health of Ukrainians and you personally during the war?
Yes, thank you. The war had a bad effect on the psychological state of Ukrainians. I do this myself, and I recommended not keeping emotions to yourself. Talking with friends or family, it really helps. Reading books or consulting with a psychologist.
Thank you. The second question for all is, during the war, we feel stressed and anxious. So how do you deal with these feelings and maintain your mental and physical health? So we can start with David while Snizhana gets her Wi-Fi back.
Right. I would say it might sound weird, but I'd suggest getting a hobby in these hard times, perhaps not a resource or time-consuming one, but something simple like picking up cooking can distract one from these disastrous thoughts.
Thank you. How about you, Anna?
I agree with David. For example, you can cook dishes with your mom or dad. It very helps. Or you can walk in with your dog, for example. It's very helpful, and you will not have a stress.
Thank you for sharing. Snizhana, were you able to get your Wi-Fi and respond? I don't think so. Okay, so we can go to the specific questions for David. First, David, was it difficult for you to analyze the video that you showed during your presentation? Were there any difficulties during that process?
I mean, aside from some technical issues, not really. Sorry, voice crack. I approach such type of videos, mostly any type of video, with a critical view. I try to disassemble the takes or on events or statements given. So I see it as, I don't know, it became mundane to me, I would say. It doesn't mean it's a good thing to make such a video, but I'd say that I perceive it as nothing much but a video.
Thank you. And Anna, a specific question for you is, we know you study at the Faculty of Journalism. Do you think it's important to write about all of the horrors and realities during the war in the media abroad, and why?
Thank you for this question. Of course, it's very important because we are Ukrainians and we are told what it happens in our territory, but it's very important that the world will be known about this too. So when we have the opportunity, we students are writing about war. It's a small text about the war, and we are studying to do this. So yes, it's very important.
Thank you. And back to David. So in your opinion, what does freedom truly mean for Ukrainians?
At large, for the Ukrainian nation, it means that that would sound, I don't know, very ultra-nationalistic, but being able to enforce our will, it's not necessarily bad things, but being able to enforce our worldview, at least on our territories, at least at our home, without rowdy neighbors interfering, I would say.
Thank you. And back to Anna. So could you tell us about any athletes who supported Ukraine during the war?
Yes. A famous football player and a player of Polish national team, Robert Lewandowski, with his husband, he support Ukraine. And a famous biathlete, Iga Świątek, she is too Polish. She too help and support Ukraine. This was a very interesting history about Iga. By the way, she stopped cooperation with the production of phones that are still sold in Russia. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. How important are sports to you personally at this time, and how much does physical activity affect harmony in your life?
Yeah, thank you. Now sports help me to distract myself. I can watch football, or I can do sports in my own, and it's really helpful to me right now, because when you're always reading the news, it's very stressful. So I find the way when I can do healthy thing for me, and it's very helpful during the war.
Thank you. This question is for both of you, so we can go with David first. Could you please name 5 adjectives that you can use to describe the war?
Well, I would say expected, unavoidable, malicious. I don't know if that would count as an adjective, but it presents an existential threat to us, and I hope victorious.
Thank you. How about you, Anna? Do you have 5 adjectives to describe the war?
Can I describe the war in a few words? Yes. It's a pain. It's a stress. It's a fire. It's army. It's of course Ukrainians people and Russians people. Maybe like this.
Thank you. David, how do you feel about things currently today, and what helps you stay strong?
I don't know. This has been going on for at least a year. I think I've adapted. It became the new norm for me and probably for all of the people here. The only thing that keeps me up are the hobbies, and to be honest, I like seeing Russians outraged when we, for example, attacked the islands. That makes me happy. For example, that when they're get the taste of their own medicine, that would be interpreted as such.
Thank you. Anna, back to the topic of sports. So many sportsmen have died because of the Russian war. So how do you feel about the fact that so many Russian citizens are still allowed to take part in global competitions in sports?
Thank you so much. We know that a very large number of athletes now are defending Ukraine, and a very large number of athletes is dying, and it's a very big problem because we have very talented athletes, and now they are died, and I feel a pain like all fans of football. It's a very big pain.
Thank you. David, how do you manage to control your emotions in moments of fear?
Well, in moments of fear, it's not much. The moments of fear are not an emotional thing, but rather it's where the instincts are taking over. For example, if I say that there are explosions going off, I would not weep or something. I would simply take cover because it is the most sensible thing to do. It's like my biology takes the wheel on this one.
You. Anna, why is the work of journalists so important during wars?
Because the journalism and journalist is these people who write information, who tell information for Ukrainians or another peoples, and it helps to understand what is going on. What is going on, for example, in Ukraine, because we have a war, and is the people who works with the journalist is the people who works with population. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for David. So how did the older generations react to having a lack of mobile communication and internet during such times? Have you spoken to anyone from previous generations that lived through conflict similarly, but they didn't have access to information?
Yeah, I don't know. Most of my family, the elder people in my family, did not live through such times of conflict, except for maybe the war on Afghanistan. But in this case, they were on the wrong side. What I would say is that they were shocked at the thought and at the sight of the people that they were studying with coming back in caskets. They were told that the system that was telling them that everything is all right, that glorious Soviet army stands over the Afghanistan evildoers, that is doing fine. The same system is omnipresent and it still works in Russian Federation. And maybe, I don't know, it would be fitting to describe that my grandparents, my parents lived under the rule that was similar to Russian. And one second. And for the lack of electricity, I'm afraid they did not experience it, if this is the main point of the question.
Got it. Thank you. Very interesting. Anna, so how can Ukrainian students get involved in social and political publications and channels? Are they able to get involved with the Ukrainian media as well?
Sorry, I don't understand why the students can involve. Yes, and
Yeah.
what? Can involve what information?
Like contribute articles or anything like that?
Susan, can you repeat the question? I don't think that she understood it.
Sure. One student asked, how can Ukrainian students get involved in social and political publications, and are they able to write articles or learn more? Any advice you have for other students to get involved?
They can support our army. For example, it is very involved, or speaking about topics, speaking about political topics that is too involved, or they can help to to 1 minute, can you remember? To distribute the information, for example, in social media. It can be stories on Instagram or in Facebook, like this.
Thank you. That's helpful. And what media do you read to know about the latest news during the war?
I use Telegram or Twitter. It's not very popular in Ukraine, but I love Twitter. I read news also in the sites, but the most I like Telegram because it's very comfortable for me. Thank you.
David, how do you imagine Ukraine's victory?
I don't know, maybe even at this point in the war, we can already see our national conscience kind of withering away little by little. For example, there still, for example, pro-Russian elements sometimes get a position of power, and the public is not as ferocious about it as before. The true meaning of victory for us would be not only in the military term by getting rid of Russian invaders on our territory, but it would also be having our national conscience influence our decision-making process and influence our politics. We simply should not allow the conveniences of modern life to take over this idea, not our national idea.
Thank you. The next couple of questions for both of you. So what advice do you have for your peers going through this war together? Like people your age, do you have any advice for them as they endure this war with you? We could start with David.
Like I said, if you are a female or non-combatant, I would say that pick up a hobby to alleviate the stress and try to involve yourself in assisting the armed forces. And when it comes to the armed forces, I can give an advice because I'm a non-combatant. But in general, I would say maintain calm and try to bring the victory closer to reality. Try to help achieve victory as much as you can, little by little.
Thank you. Anna, do you have any advice?
I recommend that speak about the war because it's very important. You can speak with your family, your friends. Also, you can do useful things. Maybe you want drawing or you want cooking something. It's very helpful.
Thank you. And then David, who has given you the most support during this past year?
My family.
And you,
That's
Anna?
it.
My family too.
And what do you look forward to the most once the war is over?
I'm going to touch on topic of my presentation. I'm looking forward to such say evil actors as the one that I was talking about suddenly disappearing from the streets of Russia and becoming lost to time. I look forward to it with unimaginable desire.
Thank you. Anna?
I'm looking forward that Ukrainians will speak in our language, in Ukrainian language, not in Russian, because the Russian language is not the same than Ukrainian. I'm looking forward that Ukrainians understand this.
Thank you. Praying that you both experience both of these things at the end of the war. And that wraps the questions that we've received. I'll turn back to Dr. Dobromylska.
Thank you very much, Susie. My question is to all of you. When you hear and read in the news what is going on in the international news, what approach do you think will be most effective in letting the people in the world know the situation that is most traumatizing for you?
I would say when it comes to mass media, our approach is probably the most right one, but when it comes to our public, it's a rather, I don't know, weird approach. I observed some interactions where, for example, Ukrainians were extremely ferocious about their viewpoint. They were flooding, for example, random forums. They were starting unjustified conflicts with members of various online communities, for example. And this does not help us. This creates further distrust towards us, and by extension, our media, our army, our state. And what's even more hurtful, people that been hurt by interacting with us will be attracted to the Russian side, which is even worse for us. So if you happen to, for example, ask a very poor, I don't know, game developer to add Ukrainian localization instead of taking the effort of adding it yourself or making it yourself, or commissioning someone to making it yourself, you might want to reconsider this choice because it might end up being harmful.
That's an excellent point. Anna, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Media is very useful to tell about the war. They can show the photos or the videos which can be shown, and of course you and yourself can spread the information on some social platforms, for example Instagram or Facebook. It's too very useful.
Well, thank you very much. Those are very good answers to both of the questions. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, when you think about the history of Ukraine and the fact that basically this has been going on for many centuries, do you have a perspective that eventually Ukraine is going to be a democratically run country with a system that is fair to everyone?
I would say I hope that it will end up like that, because the idea of self-determination and desire and pursuit of freedom in force of oppression, for example, like imperial Russian oppression, is one of our pillars, or is one of the pillars of our national idea. So that would be a very favorable end to this conflict, and I hope we will be able to see it happen in the future.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we know that Ukraine has always fought for freedom, and we are now doing this, and we can see the history facts that they say about this for us. And I know that Ukrainian is democratic country, and it will be democratic country always.
Well, thank you. We also hope that Ukraine will be a democratic country, and that EU and US will be able to support your struggle as much as possible. But as you mentioned, you yourself have to focus on changing the political structure so that the people in your parliament are basically elected by the people rather than those who can pay in order to be there. So from my perspective, that's one of the biggest problems that you have there. Thank you very, very much to both of you. And of course, I'm sorry that Snizhana was not able to be there. And Susie, thank you very much for hosting. And I wish you a good, positive future. And if you have any questions, please write to us. And if you want to contribute something to our journal, just let us know. So have a good week and take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.